Hi, I'm Carmelana Tibbetts. Welcome to the Agosia Arts Studio. I make a lot of birds and mammals in my cloth dolls, and every once in a while I will make a reptile like this guy. This is a horned lizard, and he is very attractive and I like him a lot. And like a lot of my reptiles, I will crochet a coat for them because it's a way to get sort of a scaly texture. Recently I did a desert tortoise, and I wasn't sure what to do with that guy because I wanted something that looked like the pattern of the shell, but I wasn't quite sure how to approach it. So I did end up crocheting something, and I didn't know if it was going to be a success or a failure, but I did record all of the steps. So I'm not going to do the big reveal until the end, so you'll have to watch to see how I did it and how it turned out. So let's get started. So here is the figure that I am dyeing the coat for. This is a tortoise, and you can see the basic colors of the fabrics here. It's sort of a grayish, greenish, yellowish brown, which is the goal. And this is the coat that I have crocheted for the tortoise. And it's just basic crochet pearl cotton, and then this is cotton. So I soaked it overnight with sodium carbonate so it is ready to be dyed, and I'm just going to paint on the dye here. And to prepare the area, I just have some fabric that's just kind of scrap fabric and some newspaper underneath. If you're doing this at home and you haven't done it before, I really suggest putting down plastic underneath everything. And it's one of those cases where do as I say, not as I do. So the goal for me is to have the centers of the hexagons a lighter color than the exterior of the hexagons. So what I have done is I have mixed up two batches of a brownish dye. I use Procyon fiber reactive dyes. And generally I use fuchsia, turquoise, and yellow, but in this case I used some pre-mixed colors. And so just sort of see if I can give you an idea of the colors here. This is dark brown mixed with green, which is kind of an ugly brown. And this is the dark brown mixed with yellow, which is kind of a prettier brown. So these are very concentrated dyes, and what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use these colors painted on here. It's not going to soak through all the way because this is very thick. This is much thicker than fabric. So I'm not trying to dye this completely with these pre-mixed solutions. What I want to do is have just a depth of color. So I'm going to add the color from these two solutions onto the crochet, let it sit for a while, maybe dry, and then I'm going to over dye the whole thing with a light gray. So to do this, and I've done this sort of thing before, and it's just kind of a haphazard process. Because all of my works are one of a kind, I really have no idea what's going to happen in the end. So it could turn out to be a total failure, but whatever it's going to be is what it's going to be. So this is actually a lot darker than I want, but that's okay. So I'm just kind of painting on, and in the end, not all of it is going to react, so it looks darker, but then, you know, once you finish everything, a lot of the color washes out. So, you know, you're not too worried about it. And I'm not too worried about, you know, having a little drop here and there, you know, making mistakes, because nothing in nature is perfect. And I know that, you know, things happen, and in a real tortoise you're going to have little spots and bumps and scrapes and odd little bits of color, and that's okay. So I've kind of done the front there, and it looks a little weird, but that's fine. So now I'm going to go with this other color, and if you look at a real tortoise, you know, they have kind of these lines of color on the segments of their shells, and those are growth rings. So I was just trying to kind of replicate that look with the dye, and so you can see how this is going to progress, and everything will kind of blend together later. So I'm going to continue on with this, and I will show you what it looks like in a little bit. So I'm just going to go ahead and finish for now. Before I go to the next step, I wanted to show you what I did, because I changed my mind in the middle of the process. I decided that the two colors that I had were not enough, and I wanted a little more depth of color. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, boy, this looks hideous. I've never seen anything that looks like this. But remember, all of the colors are going to blend together, and I'm over dyeing this with gray, so it's going to look a lot more cohesive, and all of the stuff that looks very distinct is going to blend. So I decided that I wanted a little more color in the middle, so I mixed some plain yellow and added that on top. And then after doing the front, I decided that I didn't like the kind of bullseye thing, so on the back I went with more open circles and then filled that in with yellow. And when you look on the inside of the coat, you see how little of those dark colors go from the one side to the other. So I did the edges of all the little granny squares in the dark to make sure that it looked like a binding, but you can see on the other side it doesn't really bleed through. So because the inside was kind of blah and a little bit boring, I added the yellow spots, because this is going to be an unlined jacket. So if people open it up, I want to have a little bit of visual depth inside as well. So this is still very damp. You can see that it's soaking through to the fabric that I have underneath, but it's not dripping. So this was pre-treated, pre-soaked with sodium carbonate overnight, and then I wrung it out, and I do all the things that you're not supposed to do with crochet, which is, you know, wring it. So I can hold it and my hands aren't getting wet. I'm probably getting a little bit of color on here, but not much. So this is just damp, and I'm going to let it sit overnight damp like this, and that will fix most of this color. So then I will rinse it and I will over dye it with gray, and we'll get to see what the final result looks like then. Well, we are back with Mr. Tortoise here, and he has a very cute little face. He's got a little hoodie, because I don't know if you've ever noticed, but tortoises, they have a ring of skin that the head goes in and out of. And he is wearing his finished jacket. And overall, I am very, very happy with it. The colors match fairly well the colors and the fabric of the body. One of the things that surprises me about this jacket is how much of the sort of bright yellow of these centers really stayed with the color here. And you know, when you turn it inside out, you can see this yellow center is really distinct, which is a surprise, because when you over dye with gray, everything tends to gray out, and you would expect that a lot of that gray mixed with this yellow would have made this a little more muddy, which is kind of what I wanted. I wanted that sort of muddy-ish color for the turtle. And another surprise is that, considering how dark the edges were and those rings of the dark brown that I mixed, that really faded away. There is brown here, so there are multiple colors. It's kind of hard to see because it's subtle, but there are rings of color, but that dark brown really washed away, and I'm not quite sure. I'm really surprised that the yellow stayed so distinct, but the brown really faded away. So in any case, I'm very happy with this. This kind of garment, when I do something like this, I don't line it. So this is the inside of the garment. This is finished. I added some little beads here to act as buttons on these little granny squares. So this is it for this guy, and he is done. So now you can see what kind of thing that I do with my crochet when I'm dyeing. So I make the thing first, and then I try something out. Each one is different. And then one thing I do is, once this is all done, I'll usually take a shower with it, stomp on it to get most of the dye out, and then I'll throw it in the washing machine with my other clothes, and then this just went right into the dryer. And one of the reasons I did that is because I wanted to kind of fluff up these fibers a little bit. Because if you're familiar with crochet, you know that there is not necessarily a good side and a bad side, but the two sides have different textures, and this side I wanted on the outside has more of a three-dimensional texture sort of popping out, which is what I wanted to give the look of those shell segments for the tortoise. So anyway, he is done. He is super great. I really like him a lot. And I hope you enjoyed seeing how I experiment. Luckily, this was a success. I wish maybe it wasn't quite as yellow, but I'm happy with that. And he is done, and now he is ready to go out and find a new home. So, see you next time. Bye-bye.